Well, good morning, Uganda. It is the 25th day of May 2023, and we're very glad that you're joining us this morning to make sure that we actually started out together. Of course, I am with the team of gentlemen here with me in the house. My name is Mollen, Kenyena. Welcome. Yet it is a brand new day. Quite nice outside, and of course that means that it's starting out quite pleasant for you to get going in whatever you have planned for today, and make sure that you actually can be able to get to it. Well, also we'll be taking you through what is happening within the country and beyond, and of course matters that might actually be sparking an interest in you, or probably some that you might need to be concerned about and obviously be informed about. We'll be getting to that, but it is also a Thursday, Throwback Thursday, and sometimes we have to look back and remember the things that actually were interesting, or the things that we think should have, been kept around, or if they could actually come back. Now, we might not have a travel machine or time machine to go back in time, but at least we do get to see ourselves, a little bit crashing on some of those things that actually made sense or can still make sense. Now, I'll be speaking with the gentlemen here, what they think should be one thing that, can be kept alive, can be brought back, or something they wish actually could be brought back, especially here in Uganda. I don't know, in whatever category, whether economics, whether politics, something that you feel should be brought back. I'll start with Felix. Good morning.
Morning. How are you, Mollen?
I am all right. I'm all right.
See, yesterday when you did talk about complexion, and clearly you did take the notes. It's evident on how you turned out today.
Thank you.
So you did talk about throwback, though far from something quite interesting as I was coming here. I remembered one of the things that used to happen. I don't know if they used to send you to shops, and then they send you like for 5 things. And
that would be the beginning.
I don't know how they expect you to deliver perfectly on all of them. They tell you buto, kota ya mchere, nyanya, mtunguru, then maybe soap. Then you had to get sort of like a rhythm, or how you going to sing that, buto, mchere, nyanya. But the worst then would come to life when you got a distraction. Personally, I used to be distracted by cars. I used to love, of course, you know how we used to give ourselves those cars we used to beat on the way you're young. I used to be taken away by red cars. So whenever I'm set and I met a red car, or that was a distortion of the mchere. Now you would end up, you go to the shop and then you see, like in your mind, there are not 5 things. Like,
or even mix them, because they tell you, okay,
instead of
tomatoes for 500, you bring the tomatoes for 2,000,
and then
yeah.
There's a time I took beans instead of rice. Like, those things used to happen.
It happens.
And then let me tell you, when hell broke loose one time, they set me for meat. I went, and you know how, and my mom was very strict about issues of quality. You know how people don't want too many bones, then fat, masavu. Now, for me, I think when the man was cutting the meat, I was on my business. Like, no one will accept that.
Yeah.
Then I had to go. So that habit of telling people to take back things is one of the things I'm throwing back. It's one of the worst experiences. Say, busy you.
Yeah.
Busy. And then when you go to the shop, you start to pretend, I know, man.
Even cry a bit for sympathy.
Actually,
because you want them to
kudos to
sympathize
those
with you.
shop attendants and the butchermen who used not to give us hard time when we were taking back these things. Because they asked you for beans, you've brought rice. Then you say busy, of course, with a couple of slaps and whatever.
Yeah.
But those were good old days. Now people buy things in supermarkets, things are packed. I hear there's Jumia, there's all these things. People are buying tomatoes on apps, and I'm thinking, for us, when you went to buy tomatoes, your mother would get in that basket. Like initially they would take like that process alone would take a lot of its own time. So times have changed. I guess those things now are really old school.
Yeah.
You can't find some Mollen bedding in a basket of tomatoes.
Why would I do that? I can select from the app. I can easily select from the app and have them delivered. And they actually get delivered.
Nowadays when people use paste, here I see at home paste. They call it paste, tomato paste.
Yeah. Well, there's a lot of benefit actually to being there yourself, and it still is. A lot of people have to go to markets to, you know, get the fresh ones, and obviously that's still an experience as well. There are also kids that they're still, you know, being sent to markets and they end up mixing things. So I think it's a stage, and we all outgrow that. Robert, what is it for you?
Well, first you asked what would I wish could be returned the current day. I'll begin with that. That is graduated tax.
Yeah.
I have memories. One time I was being driven to school, that is pre-primary, and I saw these men put on ropes. So I remember asking my father, what is that? And he told me, young man, when you grow, you must work hard. Because if you don't work hard and you don't pay tax, you'll be like them. So in a short distance, we saw others running like nothing.
Yeah.
So
I'm told people used to run from. What kind of tax was that, though?
At the end of the day, I think it was every man above 18 years, something like that, you had to pay tax. And it made people work very, very hard. So it is one thing I'd look at and say, maybe if it came back. Today, these youth we find in trading centers, they don't, you know, and that. But memories, for me, the good old days is when you used to play from about 3-4 neighbors. Now, there was this time, I think Kunda can connect. You're coming back home and you're a bit late. You have to enter stealthily, and there was also bathing, you know. So you enter stealthily, you don't want to be noticed. You run, you get a basin, the kind of showering you do then. Yeah? Because you won't hurry by the time they can notice. Now, guess, sometimes...
But there are major areas we knew that they were going to check, so you have to do those major areas.
Now they check the feet.
Actually, first I used to check in between. Because, of course, for us, we knew the feet. That's where they start.
Yeah.
Let's begin. So should pass
even
a
the
finger
head,
in between.
Somewhere they would check your head.
Yeah. And of course, then chuka mugongo.
Yeah.
So it was.
Then you would get those canes. But today, well, people are in fences. These children, they play within as if they're cows or chicken. You know, these cows in zero grazing or chicken. Now, you know, broilers.
Yeah.
Nowadays, it's really dangerous.
Yeah, you can't. But those days, you would play like from here to Shimoni.
Look at this one. We used to leave Ruwaga and go to Kenyena for you.
Yeah, it used to be a real hassle.
Some of the diseases attacking our children today did not attack us because the bodies would work them out.
And then you didn't have like bakagere kutanga. You know, barefoot, like, you know. you know the distance.
Days.
But then you'd have panyas, then you'd go eating mangoes, fene, sugar canes. But today, what are you eating? Chocolate.
Those were some of the good times. But the chocolate and chips we like. And have you noticed how recently, if you're going to visit kids at school, they actually have a list of what they want. And first on the list would be KFC, CJ's.
Which children are we talking about?
My dear, kids recently. Forget those things of I want matoke, I want this.
No, let's get what Felix takes because
Maweke. You don't know Maweke.
They don't want that.
They don't. Who told them the children don't have a choice? Since when do kids have a choice?
Well, these ones have. These ones have a choice, and you don't bring that. They will not even take it. They'll be like, no, it's fine. They will be like, it's fine, and it's
for us,
okay.
Those days when they were coming, Mom would wake up in the morning. Never funa enkoko. They cut it, boil. You know, sure there was some brown rice. Then they'll put for you some Irish. bakuyambe ne
my
bakuteerako ko ku mugati
That is all gone. Now all you have to do
KFC.
is drive in at KFC and just pick whatever and go. You don't even have to wake up very early and prepare
So why
anything.
is that
They don't need
excitement
that.
where your mother, you know, they're coming to visit you, they do
Yamfumbi
that cooking,
day, you know,
They don't
mommy's
want to
chicken.
know. I am telling
in
you.
boxes, you know, that mama, you know, boxes, those containers, you are similar, like, you are
You
like
have to
6
first see
boxes.
your performance before eating. If you're in bold, they first look at your
No,
performance.
for the mothers, they take on your because they've been missing you. Hey, China,
Clearly,
but
you
of course,
guys,
yeah.
clearly you guys
But anyway, how
enjoyed
many
that
times do
phase.
fathers go for VDs anyway? Also,
Well,
when you see him, just know.
it is trouble, definitely. He comes with joy and trouble as well.
But of course, for them, of
Then
course, you're
after Felix,
focusing on the pocket.
What was also interesting was those words they would tell you as they are leaving.
Yeah.
Mwana wange soma, akajja obunaku
At that point, you play nice.
That's-
You're
that's
so
not
behind
cancelling all
because
that
they're
time.
about to give
But
you
you have an
pocket money.
alternative.
They're about to give you pocket
But
money
let me
at
tell
that.
you something about
you
that
have
moment.
to play nice.
I hope my mom is not watching. Mom used to get like 10,000, like something between 5 and 10. Now after change where we nusu, like bibiri yakwetira omunusu. I should give you like 5,000. Naye ngakuwa amagezi ga million. The advice would be
Yeah.
like she has given you a bibiri.
Have an accompaniment.
I'm thinking, out of 5,000, what is left for?
Yeah.
For giving out.
You've already made the denomination. Bitano bibiri.
Didn't you have matrons? Mine would ensure that she gives some money to the matron to look after me.
Wardens.
Wardens, then
Yeah.
she gives you also, and the matron is sure your mother has not left you with any piece, with any money. Kumbe, you'd have double, so you make sure here and
Yeah.
there, then they pay at the canteen. It was
also a
interesting.
tactical way because you also get to kind of schedule the canteen, you know,
But
when
some
they're
of us-
supposed to give you something. And it was always actually
It was
a good
teaching
one.
children how to manage finances.
But also smart
at a
people.
very
Some of us made sure that if they are brought for Kirabo,
Eh.
to say,
It seems like
you know, we
Felix
used
was
to
one of
befriend
those
those rich
trouble ones.
kids on those days. Eh? Ay, ay, ay. The kids they used to bring to those packed milk.
Yeah. Well, but while we are actually talking
copy
about
notes for people
the old
these
days and the events that happened way back, we also have, you know, quite on a sad note, if you're someone who enjoys rock and roll.
Yeah.
Well, yesterday we did lose a legend, and of course, with her music and you know, her background, I think that is an inspiration story that she has lived at the age of 83. Tina Turner, that is the American-born singer who left this world, and of course is being celebrated. I did see President Obama's message on Twitter also when he was talking about her, saying that this has been a phenomenal woman who has actually inspired a lot when it comes to rock and roll, not just in the US, not just out there, but worldwide. And of course, we continue to celebrate her life and pray that may her soul rest in eternal peace. And obviously, we'll also be taking you through what is happening here locally and internationally. Felix and Robert will be taking us through the local stories. Robert.
Well, very sad indeed. What's love got to do? Anyway, let's move to our local stories, beginning with Masaka, where the President of the Republic of Uganda, Yoweri Kaguta Museveni, has applauded the Kingdom of Buganda for supporting government efforts in skilling the youth. The President's remarks come a few days after the Katikkiro of Buganda, Charles Peter Mayiga, appreciated government for its establishment of the Masaka Industrial Hub. Museveni was commissioning the Masaka Industrial Hub, a skills promotion and learning center for Greater Masaka sub-region.
Now, the First Lady, also the Minister of Education and Sports, Janet Kataha Museveni, has launched the second phase of Education Refugee Response Plan and host communities. The second phase is expected to benefit at least 674,895 annually at a cost of 450 million. Education Response Plan to refugees and host communities targets to ensure improved learning of refugees, children in the host communities and adolescents. Now, the first phase has also benefited more than 500. The Minister of Education and Sports, Janet Kataya Museveni, while launching the second phase of the response plan, she emphasized provision of equitable and inclusive relevant learning opportunities to the refugees.
Moving on, yesterday marked 57 years since the attack on Mengo Palace by UNLA forces led by Idi Amin on orders of the Prime Minister Dr. Apollo Milton Obote. The Katikkiro of Buganda, Charles Peter Mayiga, insists on hard work to restore the glory of Buganda as they mourn the 1966 Mengo crisis. The Katikkiro made the remarks during the prayers organized by Buganda Kingdom at St. Nicholas Orthodox Cathedral Namungona, led by the Archbishop Leonomas Muzehe.
Now, following Parliament's recent amendment to the Road and Traffic Act, providing for 2 million shillings penalty for motorists who contravene the set speed limits on Ugandan roads, members of the Road Safety Advocacy Coalition Uganda have appealed to the President to quickly assent to the new amendment. The revelation was made at a meeting held in the Inter-Service Hotel in Zambia in Machindi.
Now, internationally, after months of anticipation, Florida Governor Ron DeSantis has officially launched his U.S. presidential campaign in a rocky, glitch-filled broadcast over Twitter. "We need the courage to lead and we must have the strength to win," he said, after technical issues delayed Wednesday's announcement by more than 20 minutes. "If you nominate me, you can set your clock to January 20th, 2025 at high noon, because on the west side of the U.S. Capitol, I will be taking the oath of the office as the 47th president," he said. The broadcast was hosted by Twitter CEO Elon Musk and right-wing entrepreneur David Sachs. On a sad story, Tina Turner, the American-born singer who left a hard-scrabbled farming community and abusive relationship to become one of the top recording artists of all time, died on Wednesday at the age of 83. She died peacefully after a long illness in her home near Zurich, Switzerland, where her representative said. Turner began her career in the 1950s during the early years of rock and roll and evolved into an MTV phenomenon. In a video for her chart-topping song, What Love's Got to Do With It, in which she called love a second-hand emotion, Turner epitomized the 1980s style as she styled through New York City streets with her spiky blonde hair, wearing a cropped jean jacket, and of course a lot that can be remembered about her. Now, away from that, the leader of economic freedom fighters, South Africa's third largest political party, has said he would supply weapons to Russia because Moscow is in a war with imperialism. In an interview with BBC in Johannesburg, Julius Malema insisted that South Africa is an ally of Russia and that the ANC government's position of non-alignment only applies to the war in Ukraine. "I will go beyond with the friendship with Russia, and in a war I will align with Russia and will even supply weapons," Mr. Malema told Hard Talk Stefan Sarkar. The EFF also wants South Africa to withdraw from the International Criminal Court. Now, African governments, represented by their health ministers, launched regional initiatives on Wednesday aimed at tackling health effects of climate change on the continent. The collective effort by governments working with the World Health Organization and the Army of Health Africa, the continent's leading health development organization, seek to harness the power of collaboration and shared experience to enhance climate adaptation and mitigation strategies. Now, the initiative, besides fostering multi-sectoral cooperation, aims to amplify the voice of health and well-being of Africa during global forums on climate action and negotiations, including the Conference of Parties. Well, there you have it, quite a lot happening, but also we want to remind you on when it comes to your health, what are some of the best practices? What are some of the things that you should consider as the go-to on every day? Robert?
Well, very important is avoiding falling sick. And how do you avoid falling sick? By boosting your immune system. Now, this time around, not with vaccines, no, but with these drinks. Any of these flavors, each of these bottles is just 1,500. I recommend regular use, and I guarantee you, your body will be empowered to fight off a number of diseases, and you will make money, enjoy life to the fullest.
Well, we also want to take you through some of the, headlines that are making it to our dailies here. When it comes to newspapers, we'll be looking at some of those. I'll start with the New Vision. And the big headline right there, Museveni orders on charcoal trade and Balalo in the north. And, of course, asks Kenya as well to hand over Turkanas accused of killing geologists. That is right there for you in the New Vision, but also looking at the series, the history, impact of East African revival movement. That is a story also in the New Vision for this morning. Parliament approves law on casual workers. Well, that is also to catch up with, and of course looking at AG rules on expired varsity courses. Well, quite a good one right there. They give you a picture of Museveni launching Masaka Skilling Hub. Felix, what do we have in the Daily Monitor?
Now we're looking at how executive orders will definitely come to affect Ugandans, and they give you a breakdown of some of these executive orders. But still in the headlines, Parliament starts degree probe today, and of course the late musical icon that is Tina Turner. And what is in the executive orders is basically what fills up the Daily Monitor.
Well, we'll also be taking you through inspirational song of the day for today, a little bit of, a throwback, and of course, make sure that we're able to inspire you for today, and of course, look back into the good old days. But for now, we will be going in for that and take a short break. When we get back, we'll also have a discussion in Good Morning Uganda news related on that. We'll also be taking you through that is traffic,
live from UBC Studios in Kampala.
More discussions in Good Morning Uganda agenda that will be leading us.
This
into
is
sports
Good Morning
highlights.
Uganda.
Related on that, also we'll have to take you through Good Morning Uganda Extra. We get back after the song of the day. Well, good morning, Uganda. It is the 25th day of May 2023, and we're very glad that you're joining us this morning to make sure that we actually started out together. Of course, I am with the team of gentlemen here with me in the house. My name is Mollen, Kenyena. Welcome. Yet it is a brand new day. Quite nice outside. And of course, that means that it's starting out quite pleasant for you to get going in whatever you have planned for today, and make sure that you actually can be able to get to it. Well, also we'll be taking you through what is happening within the country and beyond, and of course matters that might actually be sparking an interest in you, or probably some that you might need to be concerned about and obviously be informed about. We'll be getting to that, but it is also a Thursday, Throwback Thursday, and sometimes we have to look back and remember the things that actually were interesting, or the things that we think should have, been kept around, or if they could actually come back. Now, we might not have a travel machine or time machine to go back in time, but at least we do get to see ourselves, a little bit crashing on some of those things that actually made sense or can still make sense. Now, I'll be speaking with the gentlemen here, what they think should be one thing that, can be kept alive, can be brought back, or something they wish actually could be brought back, especially here in Uganda. I don't know, in whatever category, whether economics, whether politics, something that you feel should be brought back. I'll start with Felix. Good morning.
Morning, how are you, Mollen?
I am all right, I'm all right.
See, yesterday when you did talk about complexion, and clearly you did take the notes. It's evident on how you turned out today.
Thank you.
So you did talk about throwback, though far from something quite interesting.
Live from UBC Studios in Kampala. This is Good Morning Uganda.
Unlock all of the hidden powers of mind and soul. Gain the enlightenment of the past and the future, and develop the power of healing. Departure will be Friday 16th up to 23rd June 2023. Basic package starting at $1,200, 8 days and 7 nights. To register, come to Gotove Tours and Travel at Nalkwego Complex Suta, UG's Extender, George Street, Nakasero, or call +256 758 530 059 or +256 784 568 39 992 or WhatsApp +256 782 556 078. Only few slots are left. Powered by UBC Television.
naye ddala oyagala kuba akinga okuze
kuvuga ennyonyi
okakasa gwe kayongo ovuga ennyonyi
nsemesa kuvuga ennyonyi
Uganda Aviation Expo 2023 mwoleso gwa nnyonyi nga guli ku kisaawe Entebbe. Leta abaana balabe bayige ku misomo gy'ebyennyonyi nawe omusubuzi omutambuze oba oyagala okulambula Uganda jangu okuyingira shinja emitwalo 5 ennyonyi ya mitwalo 2 ate mu abagala VIP emitwalo 30 basi zino zidaboddeeka za kubanona ku City Square ebusega ku Express Highway ne Nambole obutasukka ssaawa 7 otambulira bwerere amasomero agayigiriza abaana ebyennyonyi muleeta abayizi mu Uganda Aviation Expo 2023 wali Entebbe ku kisaawe okuva nga 22 paka nga 24 June.
Iwakato, this is a quick call. I'm almost out of minutes. Now, the center.
Why rush through such important conversations? Airtel Uganda has made it possible for you to call across all networks in Uganda at the best rates with the new Bona voice bundles. Stay connected anytime, anywhere, with minutes valid for calls on all networks. Dial *100*1#. Select voice bundles and select Bona voice bundles today.
Airtel, a reason to imagine.
This is Good Morning Uganda.
Well, good morning, Uganda. Thank you so much for keeping it with us here. And if you're just joining us, we're right now going to be looking into our newsreel. And this morning's discussion, we want to look into the president's executive orders that have come forth. Well, the president of Uganda, President Yoweri Kaguta Museveni, did come out to iron out a few issues that are of concern. And of course, that was also after his tour to northern Uganda, looking at the situation that has currently been continuing over the north. And this has been mainly on matters security as well as environment. Now, it does bring out a good points when it comes to what has been happening in northern Uganda and looking at the situation over there, right from, the Karamajongs as well having guns, but also now there is an issue of Balalo that has continuously been going on, and people in the northern part of the country have been complaining. Now, he did handle the matter himself. He's saying that he is now putting bans on a lot of things that could help harmonize the situation in northern Uganda. And in his words, he actually did say that there is also issues of corruption, and he says the corruption of some elements in the security forces in northern Uganda is not only shameful and discrediting to the UPDF and other security groups, but also government agencies. And of course, that now takes in the issue when you look at one thing he talked about was charcoal burning as well. And then he says one of the forms of corruption is that the phenomenon of a charcoal business. And of course, the people that are in charge of the environment and forestry, they allow these armed people to escort the charcoal. Now, the question is, where are these guns coming from? Who is allowing this? And of course, who is providing them with this kind of responsibility? There are a lot of questions that need to be answered, but he went ahead to put a ban on this and, to be sure that this will be actually followed through, and of course, to ensure that there is harmony in northern Uganda. And one of those things he actually put across was a ban on illegal presence of Valalo in northern Uganda districts. And he also did put a ban on charcoal burning and trade in northern and the northeastern part of Uganda, and as well a police is directed for police to have 18 persons per sub-county in the region, and of course work on security roads, some of the issues that came across. He also did put a ban on Turkana coming to Uganda with guns. And Kenya, he also said that Kenya should surrender killers of geologists to Uganda for trial for murder. And a lot of issues that did actually come across that we want to look into and see the implications of that and how best we can approach these, especially to the people that have been directed, these orders have been directed to, but also how Ugandans can help to make sure that these are emphasized and they actually go to a level where the president, you know, wants them to get to and ensure harmony. I'll bring you, Robert, in here. We're looking at executive director orders from the president, and he's very clear. He's actually, if you look at the document, he's emphasizing a lot of things and looking at a history of how these have been happening, and it's high time we stop. What do you make of it?
First, we must understand that these were issued on the 19th of May, though they came more in media yesterday. His Excellency traveled to northern Uganda. And I want to call it on a fact-finding mission because before traveling, there was a function His Excellency was on, and he said, yes, I get information, but when I do these tours, I get to know more things that I do not get from my sources so well. When he was in Masaka, Greater Masaka, where he's also been for some days yesterday, he even reached out to say he's going to give a number for people to call. If you want, you can mention your name or not. Then he will have a team to follow up and listen to people's complaints. Northern Uganda has had a number of issues for some time. And these orders address the key outstanding issues that have been disturbing the people of Northern Uganda. Let's start with security. One of the challenges that has been disturbing the people of Northern Uganda has been gun violence, where Ugandan side disarmed its people. Kenya side didn't disarm the Turkana. Now remember, the Karamajongs are pastoralists, and the Turkanas are. And we are simply divided by borders. And Kenya, the part that the Turkana have, usually faces a very dry spell. And they cross over to feed their cows in Uganda. Now, when our government has been disarming the Karamajongs, it has been rendering them vulnerable to people who come and have guns, and they can take their cows. Because their security was much as state offers security, that when you have your gun, you also can resist. Now the Turkana come, they want pasture, they end up taking cows sometimes from Uganda, or even some of the cattle rustlers getting guns from them. Like one Kejong was telling us, you give, I think, 6 cows for an AK-47 or 8 cows, something like that. So the president came out and issued a ban on Turkanas coming to Uganda with guns. He said, if they enter Uganda with guns, they will be arrested, paraded before the court-martial, and charged for terrorism. What does that mean? That now, if Kenya is not disarmed, then we won't have Turkanas enter Uganda with a gun to cause mayhem. That will also mean that we have had disarmament exercise. Chances of these people acquiring guns from another pastoral group outside Uganda that comes to graze on our fertile soils, and then there is gun trade, will also be dealt with. Even the peace at heart, that the Karamajongs will be knowing that our cows are protected even without guns, because our enemy, if they come in, they're also equally disarmed.
Yeah.
So that was very vital as far as addressing this issue of guns, which has been a problem. And this time what really interested me, President Museveni was very, very specific, even to touch on what we think is hard, when he asked the Kenyan government to surrender the murderers of this was that look for minerals, geologists. He said, you gave the guns, but you never brought the murderers for prosecution. Kenya government, do this. We need it done. And most interesting on this is when he gave Kenya government an ultimatum of 6 months. That the cows you took from our people, you must return them in equal number. Because you know what you stole from us? Please bring that back in equal number. These have been some of the issues that have been causing mayhem in northern Uganda. And this explains that these tours, because there are some who have been saying when the president travels, there's a lot of money, there's this. But if we can have these in place, then one would say definitely His Excellency, his trip, his tours were of purpose. Then he also talked about security as well. Because you see, if you disarm Felix, when Felix was brought up knowing that the gun is what protects your source of survival, which is a cow, you must ensure that now you've put enough security for Felix to understand that I'm safe. Security roads, the ones you mentioned, roads in Abim, Amdat, Kitigum, so that in case of anything, this movement of troops to come and restore order is very, very possible, rather than saying there are challenges here. And he said police has to have 18 persons per sub-county. Actually, he used a word that was very interesting, that police should stop being a Kampala police. Where in Kampala, everywhere you see police officers. There are so many, but when you go to these far areas, you don't see police anywhere there. So for me, that element of security was very vital. For the environmental part of it, yes, I'm happy, because we had seen people like Honorable Donga Otto, former MP. We had seen many Clark County member of parliament. The Chief Justice recently made a statement. Did you follow that, Mollen? If you steal from a thief, and our land friend here, I don't know how that is valid in the law, that if Felix is from stealing someone's car, I steal from Felix, it's not a crime. Because he was reflecting on what is happening in northern Uganda, where the people there said no. They went on these charcoal traders, said no, bring that charcoal, gave it to people, some were harshly treated, and they had offenses. The Chief Justice says, no, you can't come and destroy our environment. So when the president says, though this has an impact, banning charcoal trading in northern and northeastern Uganda, these have been some of the areas where have been getting charcoal. Kampala people here. One expects the price of a sack of charcoal to shoot up, because people even will tell you, Amanda geyo ge marungi. Now where does it live? And finally, those that really caught me so much was the ban on illegal presence of Balalo, where he said these are people that come from western part. He talked about Rwanda, talked about some coming from Tanzania, because they also created mayhem in northern Uganda. And that is when he asked the Attorney General to draft a law where nomadism is a crime, where you are arrested and charged. So I think the trip enabled His Excellency to go on the ground, better understand these problems, and come up with a solution.
Yeah, absolutely. And of course, we're talking about the issue of the Balalo. This is something that I think people in northern Uganda, including the legislators, have constantly hinted on, saying that these people are there illegally. And they also claim that, they bought land, and by that fact, so they should belong. But I'm glad that we're seeing the president coming out to iron some of these issues, saying, no, these people need to go back. And of course, a ban like that.
Well, he says they come from Ankole, Congo, Tanzania, and Rwanda. Illegal persons roaming around should be criminalized.
That is illegal, that they are in a place they do not belong. And of course, this has created pressure in the northern part of Uganda, because you have residents that are vulnerable, and sometimes they can't even afford anything. So they end up actually selling land cheaply. So these people are taking advantage. Felix, but also touching on the issue of the Malalu and the consequences that could come from that, but also you look at the benefit on the side of northern Uganda and also some of the bans that the president has put across talking issues of security and Chako in northern Uganda. What do you have to say about that? What is your take on some of these issues?
You know, we must take cognizance of the fact that the northern part of this country has been very much a victim of circumstances of this country. And because of that, you have consistently noticed that in many aspects of livelihood, welfare, and social, for that matter, they have been seemingly been left behind. In fact, you have had some of the memes for some retailers that people even have said we will not wait for some regions to develop. Mm-hmm. It is evident that some parts of this country are more struggling than others. Let me use a much more simpler word. And one of them is the northern part of this country. Now, there is greater need to protect the dignity of that part of Uganda. There's greater need to invest in that particular part of Uganda. In fact, there's much, much greater need to concentrate on socio-economic welfare and development of that part of Uganda. I don't think any part of this country has been affected by political instability like what happened in Gulu, in the northern part of Uganda, which Gulu B is part of the same. I don't know, I stand to be corrected. However, also keeping in mind that this part of the country shares a very, very rigorous border with some of the most unstable regions of the biggest horn of Africa, as a matter of fact, which include but not limited to the likes of Sudan. Now, this also means that the country has been exposed, that part of the country has been exposed to loss in various ways. So the executive orders come quite timely, I must say, in a quick one. They come timely to try and, in fact, this should have been done much earlier. For example, for the last over 15 years, there's been a lot of cattle wrestling. One, this cattle wrestling has left people dead and also have lost their property. Second, there has been an effort to resettle people in the northern region. This is what they call they've been having a couple of processes of the implementation of justice, traditional justice, all these, the aftermath of the various insurgencies and wars that did happen. Now, you can imagine dealing with the post-war process and also struggling with settlement. This is what has been actually happening in that particular part of the country. So such executive orders come timely in protection and trying to strike a leverage and balance for the people in the northern part of this country. When you look at them, Kirabo has looked at almost most of the most valid ones individually. Like, but if you may want to make comment on 2 or 3, which is one, the total ban of Chako. Now, this is a sweet sour one. Between you and me, you know that some of the most common business transactions that happen in some of these regions are such that many people gain out of this business of Chako. From those who plant the trees, from those who burn it, from those who transport it, from those who pack it, to those who sell it. It seemingly is a bad thing, but there is someone who's going to lose. That's a matter of fact. 2, when you look at the kind of, I don't know if it should be weather or environment, you can correct, but the kind of, the northern part is known for being dry, let me put it that way. In fact, when you look at their soils, yes, not much farming is done in the north, if you're keen to note. The major thing they normally do in terms of farming, you look at a lot of corn. because probably its survival rate is high, you know. But they're not a farming population. What defines them? Let's ask that. They're not a farm. In as much as we're talking about cattle, but you can't even qualify them to be amongst the biggest people who rear cattle. In as much as they have those challenges of cattle wrestling, apart from the Kejongs in particular, who have a strong, but what definition do our people in the north have? Many people in this country have gotten to a point where they are defined by their activity or their involvement in the. But when you go to the southwest, milk, farming, they have good soil for any sort of food or plant or whatever. They have Irish, they can do beans. Because look at all the matoke we eat in this, where does it come from? Come to the central region. They are also, this is the central business area. If there is not farming, at least there are other commercial transactions. But how do we identify the
people from northern?
So there's need to protect them. But in a bid to protect them, what, you see, I feel that the presidential directive should now be aided by some of these other institutions the president has put in place, like the value addition, the parish development, the myoga things, the NADs, because now the protection is there. And so, can we, I saw His Excellency, I think yesterday, one of these days when he was in the greater region of, yeah, he did, I think, launch something, a company, was it? But it was something to do with launching that deals with skins and making what and all those things. We need to push these things that having protected them, now we are sending people out of charcoal. Honestly and truly, in countries like Uganda, people survive by the wrongest things. It is not only in the northern part of Uganda. By the wrongest things we survive, because that's who we are, that's how we live and survive as third world countries. So what alternatives do we give? The presidential directives have been appreciated, and that's very good. But now, how do we proceed to assist them? Because the protectives now are there, but now the elevation is needed.
But because his concern is on the fact that, specifically for charcoal burning, it's not even productive for them. He says now they have even gotten to the level of bankruptcy, and they are now encroaching on some of the trees that, like the shea butter trees that have for long provided a lot of benefits to the people.
For them.
Yeah, so it's not enough even when they engage in charcoal
it can't be enough, because look at.
So it's also not an option.
You first of all look at the consumption rate. Look at the competition. It's not in Uganda which only produces charcoal, regardless of the fact that if you drove on all these other roads, there is as you go to Fort Poto there. In as much as they are also.
I think the issue of northern Uganda in terms of charcoal is a bit dynamic compared to others. One, this is a semi-arid area that it's dry, so they need almost every tree to survive to help them, because you know the relevance of trees in terms of rainfall and all that. But also, why it is very complicated, that the dealers in charcoal are not people from northern Uganda. They are not the Kejongs, because even for them, they'll tell you, they don't use charcoal. Many of them don't use charcoal. So these
they are selling it and at a very low price.
Actually, what they were doing, even those dealing in this charcoal had a number of illegalities they were doing, because for them land is communally owned. It's not like here where I have my land title and all that. So this is a group of people who looked at a virgin, yet people are vulnerable there, and they would just come, maybe liaise with one or two, cut trees, burn the charcoal, come sell to Kampala. Other areas, because of the land systems, at least there is where someone will benefit from. That Felix has land, then he chooses to go in charcoal business. So it's clearing for agriculture. Then he will have charcoal there. And Felix is benefiting because he owns and is giving out. And also remember that the impact of cutting trees there and here is very different. So it was a business where the people were not getting at all. That's why you saw people like Odongo, this clerk, member of parliament, a number of leaders coming up and saying, no, this is not fair for our people. They are being cheated, they are stealing from them, yet they are not benefiting at all. And most of the cases that we've seen, people complain from other parts. trying to ensure that this already burdened soils, burdened environment and people are being exploited. That's why the president said, no, 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 charcoal trade, charcoal burning, let it be banned in this particular area.
And also he did also call upon the environmental agencies to come up and make sure that they can, you know, help with this kind of problem, create solutions. And some of them I would think of right now is, yes, we agree that there hasn't been good farming practices in northern Uganda because of the unfavorable weather conditions, but there are also a lot of species, a lot of items they engage in when it comes to agriculture that thrive under such conditions. But because they are not given, you know, all the information by the agencies available to say, look, this is what this tree can actually do. Because when you have those trees and you're able to plant them along your gardens, they could help with you know, regulating the weather impacts there. So I think they just need more information that can come across. But also now this provides them with a lot of options to also concentrate on the core, like the benefits of most of these trees. And that could also be helpful because these are vulnerable communities we are talking about, and you have people, like you mentioned, that are coming in from other parts of the country that are taking advantage of them. So that is an issue that could easily be dealt with. But you also, a little bit earlier, we talked about the Attorney General. He did direct the Attorney General to come up with, you know, a way out, especially when it comes to some of these perpetrators that, especially on the security, the security bit of it, the nomads, the balalo, that are constantly taking advantage of these people. Because they have the money, they will come, give you whatever they are giving you. And because these people cannot afford...
They come in huge numbers. You know, the Balalo issue has been very complicated in northern Uganda. I happen to have done some work under NUSAF too. And I based about 2 months basing in northern Uganda. But the Balalo issue had become a big problem. Mollen, you sleep today. People in northern Uganda are watching us. By the time you wake up tomorrow, either by miracle, even I don't know how to say it, you discover that a group of people have arrived. A group of people have arrived. Oh, how did they make it? With the cows. And they have occupied a place.
And they
and you know how
keep
they are powerful.
Actually.
Some were armed. These people come with guns. In Uganda, I think Felix knows someone, nobody are waiting for. They just come and they have captured, and they are many, and they are armed. And some were even being protected by those in authority.
I think that's where the directive is coming in.
They graze their land, and then their cows, they begin business. As today you're discussing, maybe 1,000 cows having arrived. The following day, other 1,000 come. They are armed. There are many. That's how they have been taking over places and bringing conflict. Now when the president directs the Attorney General to come up with a law that criminalizes nomadism, I don't know how that shift and all Felix does that better. Because
now we're looking at a situation.
But my fear is implementation.
No, but
we're looking at a situation,
is,
Felix, here where he did ask for that draft on how the Attorney General can handle that in terms of nomadism, and also make sure that you know, these people are put to justice. But also, Felix, you will throw more light on that and what could that encompass. But we are also looking at some of these people coming in from our neighbors in Kenya. And one of the orders he actually put across is for the Kenyan government to provide, especially those people that were caught breaking the law, that killed the geologists. And this is now crossing border. Could that also threaten our cooperation with Kenya at that point? Because they know that these people are supposed to be prosecuted in the courts here, but they did not provide them. And for some reason, yes, for some reason, that has been a long process. But now the president comes out to say, please provide them.
I think the discussions have already been there. We don't want to make it look like they have never been discussed. I'm assuming discussions could have been there about this matter. But you see, interstate jurisdiction appreciations engage something called extradition. It's not a matter of saying bring them, take them, what. Remember the process we went through to get Jamil Mukulu here. It's a process. And I want to believe that probably it has been underway, though probably slow for that matter. But the fact that His Excellency has come out to allude to the need to quick make some of these existences, I think it will be done.
In relation to also, just a rejoinder to that, even this issue that return cows in equal number.
Yes.
What you stole.
No, you know, there's something, there are no gray areas when it comes to criminality. Either Kirabo killed or they didn't kill. You can't say, the only gray area is manslaughter, which also is a lesser degree. But the actual fact is that someone died. So when there was theft, and we are able to prove it, by the way, that's why His Excellency comes out. There's evidence to the latter of who stole, what they stole. Now, the availability of certain information, certain, by the word certain, meaning that accurate, certain information towards what actually was lost. That's where we draw the power to make such demands that return this in these measures. And when you ask me what can be done, a lot can be done. When you went to Congo and you took trees, what happened to you?
You are meant to pay.
So it's the same thing. This is the International Court of Justice. All these things apply. And what's more, if it even touches losing lives, it's very, very much. Because, you know, when you conglomerate appreciation of East African community, some of these things are some of the few things why we get into communities. These are some of the fruits we should see out of a community appreciation. That when we talk about, because consistently, you remember the Mijingo Island? Some of these things are consistent because, and the challenge in that region is just so I think something we all miss to appreciate, that these people are the same people, the ones in Kenya and the ones in
Uganda.
And that's where I see a hurdle in implementing someone. These are the same people, same tribe, same lifestyle, same everything. You're going to see, I can predict what you're going to see Kenya coming to say that. Also, there was a situation, a scenario where Ugandan came and they like beyond to be moved. The Turkanas are the ones in Uganda are the same in Kenya, and their ways of life are the same. So the only hurdle I see with His Excellency's directive is that you're dealing with people who share almost everything in terms of how they live. But nevertheless, that doesn't take away a certain known criminal offenses that did happen against our people. The beauty in all this, and for me, maybe to give you a conclusion in my own submission, that the northern part of this country is dire. It is very fragile. This country operates on a seeming eggshell principle. They struggle because of some of the things I said earlier. The reality is that they have been left behind. They are picking up pieces. You look at the academia. Look at in terms of socio-economic welfare and facilitation, in terms of existence of government programs and what not. There was a time where Northern Uganda was by far fueled by NGOs than actually government agencies. I don't know if it's still the case lately. So some of these things we need to
pulled out now, and government is
we need to protect. We need to protect them so much. And I've also added that they share a very, very porous and dangerous border with regions that are unstable since even up to date. So all these directives come in unison to elevate the status of our guys in our friends and colleagues in the northern region. But we also, on top of this, I would think that it's good to give them a hand. Some of these projects, we have seen many a times the government programs even are hard to reach some of these people. When you talk about the PDM, you will find that this visibility is not there in the Kejongs. You will find most times when you talk about NADS, some of these government projects never reach some of these areas because one, the illiteracy levels are so high in some of these regions. People don't know the things you're asking for. You ask people to make circles. Someone is in a hut somewhere they don't know some of these things. You're asking them
the political instability.
Even then, all these things. For example, the Kejongs, I think the last 3-4 months, there's a time it became so intense They were fighting, cattle rustling, shooting. You know, the disarmament process is still going on. So even people who want to go there and do sensitization, so I think on top of the directives, we should also think of extending some of these government programs closer to our brothers and sisters in the northern part of the country.
Absolutely, and one of our viewers from Omoro district, that is Joel, he's also coming in to say that this is a very vital topic, and about the issue of charcoal burning, he says it's a necessary evil. However, you know, the fact that the problem is now destruction, and he means destroying of the trees, that has become too much. And of course, he says currently in the north, several areas are without rain for the past 4 months, and yet they are planning to plant. So government needs to support there. And of course, also talking about the Bararo that are making matters worse because they move with their animals in people's farms that destroy the crops that they are growing. So survival is really bad. And then he says the government should do everything possible to protect this region. And he brings out a good point, because this is an area that now the trees are being destroyed because of charcoal burning. And then he talks about the fact that obviously the Balalo are not helping because these particular animals again destroy their crops. So it is really a big problem, and of course his call for government to support on that matter is something that should also be looked at. And of course we'll have more engagements on this, and continue to send us your views. We'll keep looking into them and of course share them here. Also want to look at what is happening today in the dailies crossing borders. We'll look at the Daily Nation for this morning, looking at what is happening in Kenya. Ruto housing plan, good, bad, and the ugly. Right there, they give you everything you need to know about his housing plan. Manufacturers warn Kenya risks losing shillings 130 billion investment if the finance bill is passed. That is one to look out for. Raila's hidden hand in Odul Oster's bid. The ODM chief unhappy with fights at home. That is also put for you right there. And of course, some of the pictures coming out. Azmio issues 6-day ultimatum over talks. They give you a picture right there with you know, the people in the Azmio party there. And of course, more on education and business. Foreign currency deposits cross record. That is also right there. And the border granny of Kisii. That is also quite to catch on in the Daily Nation. Now, crossing over to the Citizen, why Forex reserves are down by 10.9. Right there, they give you much more on that story. And of course, not being enough, say the nation still has enough of 4.4 months of imports. Well, that is quite interesting. East Africa Competition Authority hits the ground running. That is a story in the Citizen for this morning as well. Government lists priorities as defense budget jumps by nearly shillings 280 billion. And that is in Tanzania. I think this is almost cutting across when it comes to budgeting. Safety fears as elevator plunges at 14 floors, injuring 7. Quite a sad one right there. And of course, more stories also to catch on with today's papers. You can grab yourself any of the copies right starting it from the New Vision, the Daily Monitor, but also Daily Nation and the Citizen. We'll be leaving it at this. When we get back from the break, we'll be looking at the traffic updates, getting into the weather updates as well. Good morning.
Pick of the day on UBC. Was brought to you by
Gatawo with MTN Momo Advance. Momo Advance tops up your Momo to complete your transactions. Dial star 165 star 5 star 3 hash to apply. MTN Momo Advance is always available when you need it.
Ojja kumpa irisiti tompa bidala irisiti ojja kumpa irisiti tompa bidala mpa irisiti yange.
That's right. Insist on getting your e-receipt. It's your ticket to fantastic prizes, including motorbikes, laptops, fridges, and a fully paid 6-day safari for 2 in Uganda. Take a picture of your e-receipt, upload it to the URA website or mobile app, and you could be the lucky winner. The more receipts you upload, the higher your chances of winning. Terms and conditions apply. More details on our social media channels.
Uganda Revenue Authority. Developing Uganda together.
This is the University of Africa. On the streets, you get your real education. Here, everybody has a degree of something. But the most important qualification is imagination. Her reason to imagine is slay. His reason is to be the GOAT. Theirs is to take the beat and make it lit. They want to test edgy until it is fire. Their reason for imagination is to add riz in style. Her reason to imagine is finesse. And hers is to find what's new and bussin'. So no matter what your situation, just use your imagination.
Bigirwa Kalisa Samuel is my name, Chief Administrative Officer, Kalio District Local Government. Kalio District currently runs a budget of 39 billion. So we basically implement central government funded projects and initiatives. There are a number of success stories we have registered over the past period, especially in health under UGIFT, that's the Uganda Intergovernmental Fiscal Transfer Project, where we built a 650 million health center 3 at Buyinda Sub-County. It is a state-of-the-art project which is not likely to be elsewhere in the country. The other project we have to reckon with is the Bukamba City Secondary School, which we are going to commission very soon, costing about 1.9 billion Uganda shillings. And then we have also other projects in production and marketing under the Marketing Production and Marketing Grant. And these include the 4-acre model farm initiative of the president. We have fisheries, fish farming. So government has basically invested a lot of infrastructure, a lot of funding in infrastructure development. And these projects are starting to bear fruits. We are moving as a local government, implementing government programs, basically the NRM government manifesto of His Excellency the President.
naye ddala oyagala kuba akinga okuze
kuvuga ennyonyi okakasa gwe kayongo ovuga ennyonyi nsemesa kuvuga ennyonyi
Uganda Aviation Expo 2023 mwoleso gwa nnyonyi nga guli ku kisaawe Entebbe. Leta abaana balabe bayige ku misomo gy'ebyennyonyi nawe omusubuzi omutambuze oba oyagala okulambula Uganda jangu okuyingira shinja emitwalo 5 ennyonyi ya mitwalo 2 ate mu abagala VIP emitwalo 30 basi zino zidaboddeeka zakubanona ku City Square ebusega ku Express Highway ne Nambole obutasukka ssaawa 7 otambulira bwerere amasomero agayigiriza abaana ebyennyonyi muleeta abayizi mu Uganda Aviation Expo 2023 wali Entebbe ku kisaawe okuva nga 22 paka nga 24 June.
This is Good Morning Uganda.
Well, we will be looking at the traffic updates for right now, looking at some of the roads coming into town, that is from the Kampala Northern Bypass. We'll be looking at the connections from there, looking at areas of Chanja from Pelere, if you're using some of those routes towards town. Now from Chanja, it looks quite okay, very clear traffic for you this morning, and that of course going through Kulambiro as well. As you head for the Kampala Northern Bypass, that looks to be clear traffic. Also areas of Mpelere, that is along Gayaza Road. We're also looking at clear traffic for you. Just a few build-ups as you head towards the roundabout. That is on the Northern Bypass, but other than that, you're looking at clear traffic as well. Now you look at Bombo Road, that is if you're coming in from Kawempe towards Waise, that is also clear traffic for this morning, indicated by the green lines right there, and that should actually be easy for you to navigate this morning. Also looking at Hoima Road, that is if you're using Hoima Road coming in from areas of Wakiso, Nansana towards town, you do have clear traffic for you. Just a few build-ups as you head towards the roundabout that is joining into the Kampala Northern Bypass. Other than that, also on the bypass itself, you have clear traffic, just a few build-ups with orange lines, but also that can only indicate that it's not intense and is easy to navigate. Now, maneuvering through that off the bypass, you look at some of the connecting roads right there, Saapolo Kagwa Road. That is where we have a bit of traffic building up. From that roundabout, you do have quite a distance right there with intense traffic, both for those leaving town and also coming to town. That is one that you might need to be aware of. But also that means that you look at some of the roads. Bombo Road actually has clear traffic for those joining, coming from town. But if you're leaving town, also that is indicating orange lines, meaning that there is a bit of traffic, although not as intense as the one on the Saapolo Kagwa Road. So you could actually be able to choose between those two if you they would still get you to a same destination of that side. And continuing with Bombo Road, right after that it gets clear, and that leads into a connection to Binaisa Road, where you also have traffic building up over there. So that is one that you might need to really look out for. And of course, continuing over there, you're looking at Binaisa Road. That does join into the roundabout at Mulago, where you have again more traffic building up. Also coming in from Chira Road, that is from that side, joining through to Haji Musa Kalde Road. That is the one that connects to Wandegea. And you might also need to consider that there's a bit of traffic for those joining the roundabout. But if you're heading to town using Haji Musa Kalde Road, that seems to be quite clear traffic. Although branching off to Nakasero Road off there, you have a bit of traffic that builds up. That is Nakasero Hill Road. That is one that you might also need to look out for. But again, if you are using the downer side towards Yusufule Road, that looks to be quite clear for this morning, and that goes all the way joining into town, but also looking at the connection towards the Kampala-Jinja Highway. So that should be easy to navigate also over there as you maneuver through town this morning. We'll also be looking at the weather update for this morning. We'll tap into your satellites to look at what is happening over the country this morning. We did have a few clouds building up for the southwestern part of the country, but also we're looking at a rainy system that did develop earlier, that is across the western side of Lake Victoria Basin. That is already bringing rains across the islands, and it is heading westward. So that system is likely to bring in a few rains, that is towards the western part of Lake Victoria, that takes in areas of Masaka. You're looking at Rengo, Zimbabwe this morning, the one indicated by the yellow lines over there, and that's the one that might be bringing in a little bit of rains right there. But we're also looking at a particular system that is starting to build up over the central part of Lake Victoria, that is within the bread and orange colors right there. So that is the one that is also starting to develop over there. That could bring us rains, isolated showers across parts of the central. That means parts of Kampala, Wakiso, Entebbe, Mukono. We could be looking at a few showers for today. Later on, as the day progresses, we're also looking at a few clouds that are developing across areas of Mount Elgon Highlands, Mbale right there. Otherwise, it is mostly sunny for the rest of the country, indicated by the grey colors right there on the map, meaning that we're having mostly clear skies and also looking at a possibility of having much more of the sunshine, especially for the northern parts of the country, as well as the eastern area that we could be looking at this morning. Now, also beyond that, we want to look at the press release that just came out yesterday. That is from the Regional Center, that is the IGAD Climate Prediction and Application Center, and that is the one that sits in Nairobi, looking at the June to September forecast. Well, this has now taken in analysis when it comes to weather and climate outlook for the region, and of course they are looking at member countries coming up to bring out a seasonal forecast. Now, this was the 64th Greater Horn of Africa Climate Outlook Forum that was held, that convened in Ethiopia. That is bringing together national meteorological and hydrological centers to look at what is likely to happen for June to September season, and of course mostly looking at what we expect in terms of temperatures, but also in terms of wet weather activities for the region. We do know that there has been low performance when it comes to rainfall distribution across the region, and obviously this is evident now that they are looking at more drier conditions that are likely to happen this season. Well, in a forecast, a report that came out yesterday, ICPAC has analyzed a lot of likelihood when it comes to the systems that usually affect our weather, talking about mostly dry conditions that are forecast for the region across the northern parts of the Greater Horn of Africa. Accordingly, Djibouti, Eritrea, central and northern Ethiopia, western Kenya, northern Uganda, and much of South Sudan are expected to receive insufficient rain until the end of the season. Now, this analysis also indicates an increased likelihood of warmer than usual conditions over the entire region, particularly over northern Sudan, parts of south and central to western Ethiopia, central and northern Kenya, central and northern Somalia, and across coastal parts of Tanzania. Now, the June to September rainfall season is particularly important for the northern, that is the northern regions of the Greater Horn of Africa, where it contributes more than 50% of the annual total rainfall. That is according to the forecast that came out yesterday. And of course, on the map right there, you look at the colors that have been put across, where we are looking at the yellow to orange colors right there, much of it crossing to the northern part of the country, the Karamoja region, and also extending to parts of Midwestern. That is indicating below average rainfall, or to put across less rainfall expected. So meaning that much of northern Uganda for this season, we're going to be looking at less rains, or particularly also bringing in mostly dry conditions. But also you look at the ones that have been highlighted in green colors, that takes in the southwestern part of the country. We're also looking at the Rwenzori area, where we have that green color indicated, as well as parts of the eastern Lake Victoria Basin. That is where we expect that we will be having at least within the normal or the average, or even to above average rainfall that is expected. So still the Rwenzori area, we're having likelihood of that for the entire season, that is June to September, but also towards areas of Jinja, Tororo. That also extends all the way up to some of the areas within that highland region. Also, we could be looking at increased increased rainfall. Now, particularly for the entire region, we're looking at a relief in terms of wet activities expected for coastal Tanzania. Also, that is indicating green colors, so meaning that they will actually be having more of that. But you look at some of the zones that have been highlighted, particularly for Uganda, we're not having dry conditions that could actually be categorized as drought crisis. Where we have the white colors right there on the map, that is indicating, yes, there's going to be, it's a transition zone. So you're looking at areas that are going to have dry conditions, but not necessarily bringing in the drought crisis. However, it's not the same story for some areas within Tanzania, where we're seeing the blue colors right there for parts of Kenya as well, extending to Somalia. Those are areas that could actually be looking at a crisis in terms of drought. And of course, it's not helping that even areas that have been highlighted for Djibouti and Tanzania and Somalia, these have already been experiencing a drought crisis, so meaning that actually it could get worse according to this forecast. But also in terms of temperatures, the forecast is indicating increased temperatures for much of the region, and of course most of it has been categorized as warmer than normal, meaning that that will be warmer than the average temperatures that are usually experienced for this time of the year. You're looking at June and September, June up to September. Now, lucky for us, even the temperatures that are actually being forecast, much of Uganda is still within the yellow zones, so meaning that it won't be that bad, except for parts of Karamoja and also eastern Uganda that are again within the orange colors, so meaning that we could be looking at slightly above the average for that particular region. But we also do know that this is still subject to downscaling, so the Uganda National Meteorological Authority will have to downscale this general forecast for the region that is from the Greater Horn of Africa, and also look at some of the local influence on our weather, consider our climatology and how we are located for this particular season, but also bringing together what is likely to affect our weather as Uganda. And this should help downscale, particularly to which particular regions the weather is going to perform in terms of rain, but also when we look at temperatures. We do know that usually June to September is associated with dry conditions for most parts of the country, but also there are rainfall performances for different areas within the country. That should guide the discussions that will be held now after this regional forecast that the National Center is supposed to focus on and bring out a detailed forecast on what particular regions can look out for in terms of what activities can be carried out this season. Now, there are also regions that continue with farming. For example, the northern part of the country, the northwestern particularly. So this will have to depend mostly on the fact that we are now going to look at particular regions. But at least the general forecast does bring out a bigger picture. There is still drier conditions that are expected and less rains expected for much of Uganda. So even when we expect this information from the downscaled forecast, we could still be looking at drier conditions. So it's important that farmers now start to prepare on how you move to other, supporting activities or supporting practices like irrigation to sustain agriculture that is going to be done within those months. And of course, that means it will highly be dependent on the anticipation that the second rainy season that will be kicking in late August, September to December will now help relieve in terms of, that is when we expect the rains to be established across much of the country. Otherwise, it could still be a forecast for dry weather, and of course, looking at alternatives on how you can keep most of these activities going. I'll leave it at that. We'll be having Good Morning Uganda agenda that will come in right after this. Quite an interesting discussion that you should stay around and be able to catch up with that. My name is Mollen Kenyena. I want to wish you a good morning.
This is Good Morning Uganda.
Pick of the day on UBC. Was brought to you by
Get away with MTN Momo Advance. Momo Advance tops up your Momo to complete your transactions. Dial star 165 star 5 star 3 hash to apply. MTN Momo Advance is always available when you need it.
Nkwanga Ramazan is my name, the head teacher of this great school, Ikumbia Seed Secondary School. The school has staff room well furnished,